But everything we've done tonight is on video.
I'll take everything off.
I don't want you to take everything off.
In the early morning hours of October the 30th of 2022, an on-duty officer from the Sarasota Police Department in Florida approached the red traffic lights at the intersection of North Cranberry Boulevard and North Toledo Blade Boulevard. As noted in an official report, the policeman noticed a black sedan stopped almost completely in the intersection. Upon running the vehicle's tags, the officer discovered that its plates were expired and the registered owner, a Hooters waitress named Naomi Furrer, had a suspended driver's license. A traffic stop was subsequently initiated, at which point the officer positively identified the individual behind the wheel as Furrer, who was the only occupant of the vehicle. During their interaction, which was captured on body cam footage widely shared in the aftermath, the woman was observed to have bloodshot, watery eyes and slightly slurred speech. She seemed to have trouble recounting her recent whereabouts and activities, but appeared to be dressed in a costume for Halloween and later confirmed to have been coming from a Halloween party. The officer also noted that Furrer had a wristband consistent with those given out at local bars. When asked to exit her vehicle, Furrer complied before agreeing to perform field sobriety tests. Given her poor performance on the tests administered, as well as her license's suspended status, the officer subsequently felt there was enough evidence to arrest the woman. As she was being handcuffed and placed in the back of the squad car, Furrer protested and even offered to remove all her clothes in exchange for being released. She was taken to the Sarasota County Jail without incident, and as of February of 2023, the criminal proceedings were still ongoing. Number 6. Anthony McRae. In the aftermath of the deadly mass shooting at Michigan State University in February of 2023, body camera footage of the suspected shooter's arrest from years earlier emerged online. Back in June of 2019, a Lansing police officer entered a parking lot on the 2600 block of Northeast Street, where Anthony McRae was found sitting on the steps outside a building. When the policeman inquired about whether that was McRae's place of work, he said that it wasn't, then stood up with what appeared to be a cell phone and cigarette in his right hand. Upon being asked if he had a weapon on him, the man confirmed that he did, a handgun in his left front coat pocket. McRae was consequently arrested on a felony charge of carrying a concealed weapon without a permit. His attorney initially argued that the charge should be dropped, since his arrest was precipitated by what they deemed to be an unlawful stop and frisk. Prosecutors contended that the officer had acted appropriately during his interaction with McRae. The latter ultimately pleaded guilty to a misdemeanor gun charge and was given probation as punishment. McRae's freedom allowed him to enter Berkey Hall on Michigan State University's campus and open fire on the evening of February the 13th of 2023. During the course of the onslaught, which spanned multiple campus locations, 3 students were slain and 5 others were wounded. Shortly before midnight, McRae died of a self-inflicted gunshot wound after he was confronted by the police. Number 5. Polo G. Footage of prominent American rapper Polo G's 2021 arrest in Miami, Florida, surfaced online the following summer. Court records indicated that the artist behind the chart-topping single Rap Star had been taken into police custody on charges that included battery against a police officer and resisting arrest. In the video, Polo G, born Taurus Tremonti Bartlett, was shown berating the arresting officers and repeatedly highlighting the fact that he has more money than they do. After Bartlett criticized the officer's career choice even further, the video transitioned to a later point in time when the suspect was sitting in a police station while handcuffed. He proceeded to state his case, claiming that he'd passed out because he was kept in the back of a patrol car for several hours in the South Florida heat with the windows rolled up. Police officials refuted Bartlett's claims that he was mistreated, instead focusing on the rapper's alleged insubordination and repeated resistance when they were attempting to detain him. The entire incident reportedly stemmed from a contentious traffic stop that took place following a release party for his studio album entitled Hall of Fame. A car Bartlett and his teen brother were riding in was pulled over for having tinted windows. The passengers were accused of neglecting to roll down the window when subsequently approached by officers, and Bartlett was apparently the only one who refused to exit the vehicle when asked to do so. His legal team alleged that he and his brother were immediately targeted and antagonized by the officers at the scene, while the authorities claimed that it was the rapper who inflamed tensions and refused to cooperate. Bartlett later had 3 of his 5 charges dropped, including 2 felony counts. His remaining charges would likewise be dismissed if he completed an anger management program. Number 4. Ryan Vest. Ohio man Ryan Vest was accused of fatally shooting a woman in Batavia Township on January the 17th of 2023. The following day, local law enforcement caught up with him near Eastgate Mall in Clermont County. Officers had reportedly pulled over a gray Jeep at about 2:30 p.m. 30-year-old Vest was sitting in the passenger seat at the time of the traffic stop and was immediately identified by police. As shown in a video recorded by a bystander who was pumping gas, Vest was ordered out of the vehicle with his hands up. The man complied with the officer's instructions and walked backwards towards them with his hands above his head. He then got on his knees and was placed in handcuffs without incident. According to subsequent reports, Vest was wanted in connection to the killing of 39-year-old Casey Moss, who'd been gunned down in what was described as a drug deal gone bad. Following his arrest, Vest faced charges of aggravated murder and attempted aggravated murder, as well as tampering with evidence. Number 3. Jessie J. Texas-born adult film star Jessie J was involved in a domestic dispute with her boyfriend in late January of 2020. According to official reports, the 39-year-old, whose real name is Cindy Taylor, had been drinking when she suddenly got into a heated argument with her unnamed partner, which turned physical. Police responded to the couple's home in Moore, Oklahoma, where Taylor's boyfriend said that he'd woken up to find her throwing out his medication, which she claimed to be steroids. When he confronted her, she allegedly attacked him in a rage. The man presented with a bloody wound near his left eye and reportedly had visible bite marks on his left hand. Taylor, meanwhile, offered a different version of events. She claimed that her boyfriend had actually picked her up by the neck and thrown her against the wall, but first responders didn't observe any injuries on her body to support the allegation. The adult film actress ultimately faced a count of domestic violence in connection to the incident, which wasn't the first time she'd been criminally charged. Back in November of 2018, police officers found Taylor passed out drunk and soaked in her own urine on a sidewalk in Norman. The body cam footage of her subsequent arrest garnered a lot of attention online. She was charged with public intoxication, though later claimed to have been drugged after drinking only 2 alcoholic beverages while watching a college football game. Number 2. James Hyde. In the late summer of 2022, a local media outlet based out of Portland, Oregon, obtained body cam footage of the high-profile arrest of State Representative James Hyde. On the 17th of August, police officers were called to the Clackamas County Fair and Rodeo in Canby, where a woman had reportedly asked Hyde to put out his cigarette. The request angered the public official, who escalated the situation by aggressively confronting the woman. When law enforcement caught up with him later, he was slurring his words and immediately became combative. In the video, Hyde was shown wearing a white campaign shirt. He claimed that while smoking was prohibited on the fairgrounds, he was never asked to leave the property. When asked for his identification, Hyde refused and continued to debate with law enforcement as to whether he was in the wrong. The man challenged the Clackamas County deputies to arrest him, which they did, prompting him to fall to the ground and spout profanities at them. Hyde, who'd been appointed to represent Oregon House District 39 only a few months earlier, was taken to the Clackamas County Jail on charges of disorderly conduct, criminal trespass, and interfering with a peace officer. Although he did spend the night behind bars, the politician was subsequently released, and the district attorney declined to prosecute him on any criminal charges, citing a lack of sufficient evidence. Before we move on to number 1, you can stay tuned right after in case you missed part 1, which we released last month. That's coming right up for you after this. Number 1. Mark Brown. 41-year-old Mark Brown led a seemingly normal life as a builder from St Leonards-on-Sea in East Sussex, England. He had no criminal record, nor any indications that he was capable of extreme violence. However, unbeknownst to the rest of the world, Brown harbored a secret obsession. He would prowl the internet, foraging through websites that advertised the services of escorts. Primarily using inheritance money, Brown met up with roughly 10 women, but as it would later emerge, the discreet trysts he arranged sometimes culminated in violence. In March of 2018, Brown first encountered a woman by the name of Leah Ware on the escort site he frequented. The pair's subsequent rendezvous eventually evolved into a full-blown romantic relationship. Despite Brown still being involved with his partner of 14 years, the man paid for his lover to live in an apartment in nearby Hastings. But when her lease expired, she moved to a static caravan at Little Bridge Farm. Ware was kicked off the property when the landlord learned of her residency, after which she was moved to a partially converted shipping container hidden inside Brown's workshop. Then sometime on or around May the 7th of 2021, the secret lovers got into an argument. After Ware pushed for Brown to finally leave his long-time partner, the man flew into a rage and allegedly killed Ware, whose body he then scorched in a homemade incinerator. A few months later, Brown hired an escort he'd met with several times for a job worth $100,000. The promise of such a large payout lured Alexandra Morgan to Little Bridge Farm, where she was murdered and had her remains burned in an incinerator, just like investigators theorized Ware had been. Brown then disposed of Morgan's body at the building site where he worked in Sevenoaks, Kent. The dramatic moment he was taken into custody on suspicion of murder was recorded by the police. The resulting footage was widely distributed online. Brown later claimed that Morgan died in an accident and that he'd burned her body in a panic. Meanwhile, he feigned total ignorance in regards to Ware's whereabouts, indicating that as far as he knew, she was still alive. In spite of his claims, Brown, who described himself as a psychopath with a conscience, was ultimately convicted of the two murders. In January of 2023, he was sentenced to a pair of life terms and would need to serve at least 49 years before being eligible for early release. A video of a man being forcefully arrested in the middle of the street in Providence, Rhode Island, spread quickly on the internet and led to an internal police investigation in the summer of 2022. It was disclosed in subsequent reports that the individual being detained in the viral footage was 21-year-old Armando Rivas. Two Providence officers named as Stephen Genserea and Matthew Jeanette were in the process of towing Rivas's car on the night of the 4th of July fireworks at India Point Park when the young man came on the scene and tried to stop them. According to a police report, Rivas yelled racial obscenities at the officers, then attempted to enter the vehicle being towed, at which point they decided to arrest him. The young man allegedly began to flail, kick and punch at both officers and was then taken to the ground. Officer Genserea grabbed the back of Rivas's head and smashed it into the pavement to subdue him enough to put him in handcuffs. In the wake of his arrest, Rivas faced charges of disorderly conduct, resisting arrest, obstructed an officer, and simple assault. The video proved controversial because while some expressed their belief that the officers were just trying to detain a particularly combative suspect, others viewed the rough treatment of Rivas as an example of excessive force. The Providence Public Safety Commissioner indicated that the officer's conduct was under review. As of the latest updates, the case was still ongoing. Number 7. Rebecca Warren. A former Michigan state representative made headlines in early 2020 following the emergence of a police body cam video in which she was arrested for driving while super drunk. 49-year-old Rebecca Warren, who began her career as a legislator in the Great Lakes state back in 2006, was seen by other motorists swerving in and out of the painted lines along Interstate 75 the day after Christmas in 2019. When Auburn Hills police caught up with her, they observed her veer into the breakdown lane and strike a guardrail. Warren was pulled over and asked to take a field sobriety test, but stumbled upon exiting her vehicle. She said she was returning home to Ann Arbor after attending an event where she admitted to drinking 2 or 3 glasses of wine. Warren protested as officers subsequently placed her in handcuffs saying, "You don't understand. I'm elected. I'm a senator. People will be like, the senator got arrested." As she was placed in the back of the patrol car, she continued to plead with the police to release her, indicating the arrest would be career-ending for her. Warren's objections were ignored, and she was taken to a nearby hospital where her blood alcohol level was determined to be nearly triple the legal driving limit. In February of 2020, the lawmaker pleaded guilty to a reduced charge of misdemeanor driving while intoxicated. That May, Warren was sentenced to 1 year probation plus 10 days of community service. She declined to seek re-election when her term expired the following January. Number 6. Brent Smith. A physical altercation broke out at the home 46-year-old Brent Smith shared with his mother in DeLand, Florida. On the evening of April the 9th of 2020, Smith's mother reportedly dialed 911 after her son had struck her several times while shouting obscenities at her and threatening to kill her with a butter knife. The man snatched her phone away and was still holding it when officers arrived a short time later. When the victim told law enforcement about what had transpired, they arrested Smith, who was said to have been intoxicated at the time. As shown in the resulting body cam footage, the suspect began arguing with the deputies while being taken into custody and even threatened to hit one of them in the head with a hammer. He then coughed in the officer's direction multiple times while continuing to issue threats of violence. As he was placed in the back seat of the patrol vehicle, Smith could be heard telling an officer, "I hope you die. I hope you catch corona. I hope it latches onto you." He faced a myriad of criminal charges in the aftermath, including aggravated assault with a deadly weapon, aggravated battery on a person 65 or older, and grand theft, as well as threatening and assaulting a law enforcement officer. He was held without bond at the Volusia County Jail while awaiting the case's next steps. Number 5. Johnisha Lewis. On the morning of September the 22nd of 2021, Texas police initiated a traffic stop in the 2000 block of Kirby Drive in Pearland. An officer reportedly observed a motorist traveling at speeds of up to 48 miles per hour in a posted 20-mile-per-hour school zone. After the policeman informed the driver, identified as Johnisha Lewis, as to why she'd been pulled over, she fled, but was stopped again a short time later. As shown in viral video footage of the incident, the officer tried calming the woman down as she screamed at him for pulling her over for what she deemed to be no reason. Lewis insisted that the police leave her alone, while the officer repeatedly instructed her to put her vehicle in park, but she refused. A second officer subsequently arrived, and for several minutes he and his colleague attempted to get the irate woman to take off her seatbelt and exit the car. It was reported that Lewis was issued with more than 50 different verbal commands, all of which were ignored, and the interaction thus escalated. During the attempted arrest that ensued, law enforcement deployed a taser on the woman, who made a sudden reaching motion towards the backseat of her car. She then continued to scream and protest after she was taken to the ground, while bystanders tried defusing the situation. Lewis was booked at the Brazoria County Jail on charges of evading and resisting arrest. Following her release on bail, Lewis publicly revealed that she was pregnant and lambasted the officer's rough handling of her during the contentious traffic stop. An internal department review led to the determination that the officers had acted within policy, which was reiterated following an independent review by the NAACP. Number 4. Shelby, Elsa, Cornelia. Officers from the St. Petersburg Police Department in Florida conducted a traffic stop at 108th Avenue North and 4th Street North in the early hours of May the 17th of 2022. The car that was pulled over was reportedly being operated by 26-year-old Shelby Elsa Cornelia. The latter, it would later emerge, had been a deputy in the Patrol Operations Bureau of the Pinellas County Sheriff's Office since September of 2018. She allegedly showed obvious signs of intoxication when interacting with St. Petersburg police, much of which was captured on body cam footage that subsequently went viral online. Cornelia not only had the smell of alcohol on her breath, but also displayed many of the common indicators of impairment, including slurred speech, bloodshot eyes, and unsteadiness on her feet. Although she tried to come up with various excuses for her erratic driving and drunkenness, and even tried to use her status as a law enforcement official to get away with it, she ultimately agreed to perform field sobriety tests, which she failed. The deputy also submitted to a breathalyzer test, which determined her alcohol content to be between 0.206 and 0.219. Online booking records revealed that Cornelia was charged with 1 count of driving under the influence with a blood alcohol level of 0.15 or higher. Her employment with the Pinellas County Sheriff's Office was immediately terminated following her arrest, in keeping with department policy. Number 3. Alex Wobbles. Nurse Alex Wobbles was arrested while on duty at the University of Utah Hospital's burn unit on July the 26th of 2017. The woman, a former Olympic skier, reportedly worked as a charge nurse or a liaison between doctors, patients, and hospital managers. On the day in question, Wobbles was overseeing an unconscious patient whom Salt Lake City police officer Jeff Payne wanted to draw blood from as part of an ongoing investigation. Wobbles refused to let him obtain the sample because he didn't have a warrant or meet any of the mandatory criteria needed for taking blood. In response to the nurse's defiance, Officer Payne placed her in handcuffs in the middle of the hospital before forcing her outside and into the back of his patrol car. She remained there for the next 20 minutes, after which she was released without any criminal charges being brought against her. Body cam footage of the incident went viral when it was released later that summer, with the vast majority of viewers siding with Wobbles. As a consequence for his unlawful arrest of the woman, Officer Payne was relieved of duty, while his commanding officer was demoted from lieutenant back down to police officer. The incident led to considerable legislative upheaval, both for the Salt Lake City Police Department and the state of Utah. Lawmakers ultimately passed a bill that clarified consent laws regarding police-ordered blood draws. The police department, meanwhile, changed its policies to require consent or a warrant to draw blood, not just implied consent. In October of 2017, Wobbles and her attorney announced that her lawsuit against Salt Lake City and the University of Utah had been settled for a reported $500,000. Number 2. Wellington Protest. In February of 2022, a so-called Freedom Convoy converged in New Zealand's capital city of Wellington to protest the country's stringent COVID protocols. Subsequent reports revealed that the group, which consisted of thousands, were carried by hundreds of cars, trucks, and motorcycles that consequently blocked the roadway outside Parliament as well as other important locations. Law enforcement formed a barricade between the protesters and government buildings, leading to a number of physical clashes amongst the two sides. One such altercation involved a completely naked woman who tried to breach the front line of police officers by diving straight through it. She was predictably restrained by the officers, who then dragged her away by the hair and detained her. Footage of the nude woman's arrest subsequently went viral. More than 120 arrests were conducted during the rowdy demonstrations, with many of the detainees facing charges of trespassing or obstruction. Number 1. Jessica Blick. On December the 14th of 2018, the Cape Coral Police Department in Florida received a 911 call from a woman requesting an ambulance outside a local Family Dollar. Upon arrival in the 500 block of Cape Coral Parkway East, the two responding officers encountered the caller, 37-year-old Jessica Blick, who had a large hunk of concrete in one hand and her cell phone in the other. She declined to give a reason for the phone call or explain why she might be in need of an ambulance. Instead, Blick began walking away from the officers, who tried to get her to drop the piece of concrete. While she simply ignored law enforcement's initial attempts to get the rock out of her hands, the woman became combative after a second officer began approaching her. Blick lifted the concrete in the air and drew it back as though she was about to throw it, while telling one of the officers she was going to kill him. What followed was an altercation that was caught in its entirety by the police's body cameras. Blick ran into the road, at which point one of the officers discharged his taser but missed. It was then that the woman tossed the concrete slab at the second officer as he drew nearer to her, hitting him in the shoulder. The policeman subsequently tackled Blick into some bushes, and although she continued to resist, she was finally cuffed. While being taken into custody, the woman allegedly kicked one of the officers in the thigh and groin. She was taken to Lee Memorial Hospital in Fort Myers, where she was medically cleared, after which she was booked at the Lee County Jail. As a consequence for her outburst, Blick faced charges of aggravated assault and battery on law enforcement officers, as well as resisting arrest with violence. Thanks for watching. Would you rather witness your best friend get arrested or walk in on your parents in the bedroom? Let us know in the comments section below.